Hello, everyone. My name is Charlene Lee, and I'm going to be talking today about how do you do time management as a disruptor. The reason why I'm talking about this topic is that I get asked this question by so many people. I am so busy just doing my everyday work. How on earth am I going to have time to figure out how to grow, how to disrupt things, how to make things better in my organization or in my community or even in society? And I think this is a big issue because we're all so busy. So the idea of putting something else on top of all the things we're trying to do in our work, but also in our personal lives, seems just overwhelming. And yet, when I talk to disruptors, the one thing I hear from people over and over and over again is that they make the time. And so I wanted to spend a little bit of time today to just talk about how do you actually do that? How do you create time to be able to disrupt? So I'm going to start talking about some of those things, but I would love for you to chime in with where you're coming from. Say who you are, where you're coming from today, and I'll try to say hi to as many of you as I can. But also, please share your best time management tip. Like, this is the way you crush it every day, every week, every year, day in, day out. How do you do it? What are your secrets? What are the things that you think are uniquely you that you've come up with? Or just some of the best advice that you've gotten about how to better manage your time so that you can be disruptive? So I just want to say hi to some of the people who've joined. So Melinda, thanks so much for joining. And again, just a reminder, please say hello and love to know who's listening. And then also share again, what are your best time management tips to be able to carve out that time so that you can create that awesome disruption that you set out to do. So just a couple quick things before I get into how to do this. There are two concepts that I have found around disruptors about how they think about the time they have to spend. So the first one is that you've got to carve out time to separate the urgent from the important. The urgent is always going to be there. It's always going to say, hey, come put out this fire because you're a capable, really disruptive leader. You can go make things right over here. But you also know that these longer term things that are important get sidelined by the urgent. And so the disruptive leaders I've spoken with are really good at carving out that time for the important work and being able to set aside the urgent. In fact, the higher up you are in the organization, the more time you have to set aside to be disruptive, to be thinking about those long-term things you have to get done so that you can make the investments today to make that change in the future happen. So what would you guess to be the amount of time that the most senior people in disruptive organizations are spending? Would you say it's like 10% of their time, 20% of their time? What I found consistently, they're spending between 50 and 75% of their time thinking about things that the company has to do 3 years out, 5 years out. Sometimes that's a little bit closer. It's still 18 months out, but it's still not the things they have to get done today at some point in the future. Because this is what disruptors do. They think about what that future state is going to be, who that future customer is going to be, and then they make the decisions, those important decisions, gather the information needed to make the decisions today so that future will happen. This is the number one thing that we have to do as disruptive leaders is to carve out that time, guard it really specially so that we can do that really hard work that no one else can do. And the reason why you have to spend more time, the higher up you are in the organization, focused on this, is because who else is going to do it? If you think that somebody in the chain of command, lower in your organization, is going to think strategically, no, they're the ones doing the work of today. The responsibility for that falls onto the shoulders of people the higher up you are, and because you have that strategic long-term view. I talked to one CEO and they were saying, well, I can't do that. I can't think strategically because I've got to deal with all the operational things today. And so we stepped back and said, like, what are the things that really are urgent that only you can deal with? How much of that can you delegate? Because if you don't think about the future, who else's job is that? I mean, who else is going to have the breadth of knowledge and the credibility to say to the organization, this is where we need to go? So that's the first thing. And then the other thing is you can only focus on a few things at a time. I was talking to one organization leader and they were working on 15 different initiatives. I go, how do you do 15 different things really well? You need to pick like maybe three, and maybe of those three, just one. So two things again that disruptive leaders do, they think about the future and they carve out time to think about and execute for the future today. And they're also focusing on just a few things. If you want to hear more about the prioritization, especially in times of crisis where everything feels like it's urgent, I have a broadcast from earlier before. I'll put the URL up here so you can see it. You can go see my previous podcast at charlenelee.com/events. And this one was called Prioritization in Times of Crisis. So I want to take a moment and say hello to people. And again, share where you're coming from and share with me some of the best time management tips that you've had. All right, let's see who's here. We said hello to Melinda before. Jose, thanks for joining in from Spain. I'm here in the United States, just coming back from our holiday, the July 4th. So we're all sort of recovering here, trying to figure out where we are after celebrating the birth of our great country here. Naveen, thank you so much for joining. Joseph, great to see you. Coming in from Sydney, someone too. Chantel, great to see you here. Thanks for joining. Tanisha, coming in from Jamaica, Kingston, Jamaica. Thanks so much for joining us. And then Arun, we got Nancy coming in from the Bay Area. Hello, neighbor. Great to see you. Stefan also. And then we have Benjamin, who's coming in from Nairobi. Thanks so much for joining us from Nairobi, Kenya. We've got Matthew from London. Rob from who's thinking about the future is green. We got David from New Jersey. And then we also have Saeed coming in from Iran. So I will keep saying hello to more people as we go along. But again, share how you have thought about how do you manage your time so you can carve out time to think about the future. I'm going to talk about three things to do. And they very much relate to the three beliefs of disruptive organizations. Again, what I found in disruptive organizations, they operate differently. It feels like they live in a different place. They breathe different air from other organizations that aren't as disruptive. And so those three things are openness, agency, and bias for action. And I'm going to talk about the things that you can do to manage your time better. And a lot of it is about how much of our calendars are taken up by meetings. I don't know about you, but I oftentimes feel like I'm in meeting after meeting after meeting. In fact, I'm in a band. I play keyboards in a band with a bunch of other CEOs. And we called our band Death by Meeting because that's what it feels like. Our workday is just filled with meetings. And so this was playing in a band was our one way of getting release from all of that stress. So thinking about your meetings, I think the first one is thinking and doing a meeting audit. Look at your calendar for the past week or two, or even the month, and audit every meeting. Give it a score of 1, 2, or 3. The one is that you feel like it is a really useful meeting. It had great outcomes. You really felt you contributed, and you also got a lot of direction about what to do next. 2s were okay. You got something out of it. Wasn't great. Lots of room for improvement. 3s, a total waste of time. You're sitting in the meeting going, why am I in this meeting in the first place? And the first thing you want to do is like, how do I get out of this? Or you're just double tasking by being on your phone, trying to get all the other stuff done that you're supposed to be doing. Instead, you're sitting in this really useless meeting. So take a look at the 1, 2s, and 3s and commit yourself to going to as many ones, restructuring the 2s, and I'll talk about how to do better meetings in a second. And then just don't go to the 3s. I can identify what those 3s are and just talk to the person who's running them, or maybe you're even running them, and say, I'm not going to go to any more 3s. This goes back to the idea of agency. And the best way you can do this is to also tell your colleagues, tell the people on your team that if you are running a 3-like meeting for them, they have the power to exercise the power of 2 feet, to be able to walk out that door and not come back. Because they should have the agency, the ability to act like an owner of their time and their calendar to say, this is not helping. You're not going to miss me if I'm not here. I'm going to get up and leave. And that's okay. It's one of the best things that I see at disruptive organizations. What they do is they say, I don't need to be in this meeting. It's not an official use of my time. I need to be focused on the things that are moving us forward to that future strategic disruptive goal that we have. So the first thing is do a meeting audit. Commit to doing just the ones and having meetings that are level 1 meetings. And give people the power in the agency to be able to say, I don't need to be in this meeting, so I'm going to leave. The second thing you can do is to work on the hygiene and make sure that it has really good agendas and outcomes. This goes to this disruptive belief of openness, where everybody knows what to expect when you come into the meeting. Everyone knows what they're going to contribute. Everyone knows what the single source of truth is coming out of that meeting, and also what the next steps and actions are. I don't know how many meetings you've been in, but you've just been invited to a meeting. You can kind of guess from the subject and from the attendees what it's going to be about, but it's not clear. And so it may or may not start on time. There's nothing pre-read. There's just not a clear agenda and outcomes and objectives. So here are a couple of things. Make sure absolutely, if you're going to have a meeting, have an agenda and have an objective. One of the biggest violators of this are the standing meetings that we all have. We may feel that they're necessary to create knowledge and information sharing, but could we share that information in a more interactive, asynchronous way through all the collaborative tools that we have, so that the time we're spending in that meeting face to face is really well used to do the only things that meetings can do, which is to have discussions, to come to decisions, not just for information sharing. Which goes back to having pre-reads. Is it clear that everyone's prepared for this meeting to be able to execute on the agenda and come up with the objectives? When I do briefings with companies, I typically give them 30 minutes, but I want them to give me the deck ahead of time so I can read it. So instead of being presented to for 20 minutes with 10 minutes of discussions, we spend maybe 5 minutes to come up with any kind of questions I may have, and we make 25 minutes. We hold 25 minutes for a deep discussion. It's such a more efficient use of everyone's time. Start on time. Can't tell you how many times we don't have meetings that start on time. And then I think one of the two other quick things that I see disruptive organizations do is they have a single source of truth. There's one person taking notes, and those notes are clearly available to people through their collaboration platform, or they may just be using something like a Dropbox paper, or they may be using Google Docs, or just even a Microsoft online document. But some way there's a single truth, a single source of truth that tells everybody this is what's going on, this is what the outcomes of the meeting, and people can chime in literally online and do group note-taking and to see what the notes were from that. And then the last thing is, because of the objectives, it's very clear what the next steps are and that there's clear accountability on who is doing what. The last area goes back to the belief of a bias for action. And that is when you're trying to manage your time, if you're only working on a few important things, then your calendar tends to be much more open. And it allows you to take those next steps from those meetings based on when the work is going to get done. How long is it going to take to get that work done as the next time you meet? Versus what usually happens now, when is the next time when everyone is available? Your pace of disruption should be based on, and your gates and your meetings times for the next step should be based on the work to be done, not people's availability. And you can only do this last part if your calendar is fairly free and open. So this is the one tip, the one time management tip that I found to be the most effective. When we started Altimeter, we're analysts, we do a lot of writing time, and so we would preserve time on our calendars to actually do that deep thinking work, because you need a good chunk of hours to get the work done. And yet we kept getting scheduled with meetings, with clients, with each other. And then somebody had a brainstorm and said, why don't we just designate these meeting-free zone times on our calendars? So we would designate the mornings of Tuesdays and Thursdays so we could be completely free of meetings. And then also we would schedule from the end of the day forward so that we would leave as much of that time for that deep work time. So this is the biggest suggestion I have, is to coordinate with your entire team with as many people in your organization to say, this is really clear work time. No meetings would be scheduled during this time. And just as importantly, this is meeting time. This is the only time when we're going to have meetings. So you have that sort of fudge gray time that allows you to be able to do the other kinds of work that may spill over between those two. But designating meeting time and work time that are separate and sacred to each other is a really important part of being a disruptor. All right, so those are my quick tips. First of all, again, make sure you do a meeting audit. Make sure you have great meeting hygiene with clear agendas and disciplines and inside that meeting, clear note-taking, so there's one source of truth and accountability. And then finally, make sure you have a bias for action built into your calendar that allows you to move very quickly and have your calendar and time dictated by the work to be done rather than people's availability. All right, I want to just see who else is here and see any other things that people have sharing. A lot of other people have joined. So Manuel, so much great to have you here. Akim, great to have you here too as well. Melanie, thanks for joining from Long Island. We have Dilip from Boston, Sheldon from Essex, a person from Houston, Akim from Zambia, Dapeen from India. Lots and lots of people coming in from many different places. Even have Sudan. And let's see, one person is sharing, this is how crazy things can be. Some meetings to determine when the next meeting will be. And I've seen that. I tend to try to do as much of the scheduling again during certain times. And I also use a tool called Calendly, which I think is super helpful, that allows people to be able to just schedule based on my availability. And again, they can only book during times that I have held open for meetings. Let's see, and I think those are some of the key tips that I've seen so far. I encourage you to take a look at some of the, again, there's nothing magical about carving out time. It's about making that commitment and paying yourself first, paying your disruption agenda first to make sure you're sitting aside that time, and to then make sure you have all the time else in the calendar for doing the things that you think are needed. I do want to just point out one other resource that is available. I started a group called quantumnetworks.com, so quantum-networks.com, and it's a community to support disruptive leaders in their quest to create exponential change. So I hope you come, take a look at the group. It is free. We have regular meetings. We have a lot of active people who connect with each other. And the idea is to be able to share tips like this, ideas like this, come to the community with questions that you may have about how do I be a better disruptive leader? Because I so believe that the world needs us desperately. The world needs more disruptive leaders capable and confident in their ability to create that exponential change. So I hope you explore some more of the resources there. And I wish you all the best in carving out that time, that precious time, to be able to create that disruption. It is a daily battle to have to go out there and be able to separate that urgent call to action that has to be done today, putting out all those fires, the things that you do great, but also tapping into that long-term thinking, that time that you have to set aside because no one else is going to do it for you other than you. I wish you all the best on that journey. Please stay in touch. And again, thanks for watching. Have a great day.